It's a Jiu Jitsu Oracle with everything you need to know about the ADCC versus the Craig Jones Invitational. We'll run through everything that's been talked about so far, tell you which event we think looks like being the best event, and get into some predictions and speculation. So first off, Calum, as it stands, what looks like the better event, the ADCC or the CJI?
Okay, so obviously all the hype and all the news is kind of around the CJI at the moment. ADCC haven't really fired back in the social media war yet, and it's kind of looks like the tide is shifting with people coming over to CJI. But that being said, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, and you look at who's signed up for CJI and then who's still left over at ADCC, overwhelmingly ADCC still has the better athletes, the deeper divisions, as well as more divisions, but we don't know how many athletes are already signed up with CJI, and Craig's just kind of like dripping them out. That seems to be what he's doing. He's kind of like dripping them out one by one instead of just giving us like everyone who's jumped over. So we'll see how things continue to progress, but at this moment in time, it is looking like, despite the kind of hype around CJI, that ADCC is still going to be the better event as far as who is competing there.
I agree. The ADCC roster, as it stands, is still stronger. So who have we seen make the jump from the ADCC to CJI in the over 80 kilogram category? And there's going to be two divisions at CJI competing for $1 million prize money. Over 80, we have Nicky Rod, William Tackett, Mason Fowler, Roberto Jimenez, and Luke Rockhold, as it stands. Then under 80, Andrew Tackett, Nicky Ryan, and Joseph Chen. Is there anyone else you can remember off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. If it comes to me, I'll name it. But
okay, so then at the ADCC athletes we still have that are going to be competing there. Over 99 kilos, we think he's going to do the division as well as the super fight, because as we talked about on a previous podcast, Gordon Ryan has said that he wants to win 2 golds at the ADCC. So over 99, Gordon Ryan, biggest star in the sport by far. He's still there. Under 99, I would say favourite to win the division right now, Nicholas Merigali, Gordon's teammate, one of the biggest stars in Jiu-Jitsu. 88 kilos, defending champion, Giancarlo Bedoni. Again, new wave, but defending champion, big name in the sport, still there. And then you start getting into the depths of the divisions and looking at the names that are still there. I still think the ADCC is very strong. I mean, how many athletes have we seen make the jump in the male categories? We've got 3 under 80, and then we've got 5 people in over 80, but Luke Rockhold is a UFC fighter. So basically, that's, 7 athletes that are not doing ADCC. So in the grand scheme of things, that's still like pretty small numbers. So I think in terms of who's doing what right now, still heavily favour ADCC for roster, strength and depth.
Yeah, definitely. We can kind of speculate and predict who we think might continue to jump over.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So who are you speculating on?
Well, I think it's important to think about the divisions and like who from what division specifically is likely to kind of jump over. So the way that Craig's is set up, is 80 kilos is the cut-off point. So we think that it's probably unlikely for a lot of the 66 guys to jump over. We've heard from...
Because
it's going to be difficult, despite guys like Diego Pato being Dante Leon. It's going to be difficult for a lot of 66 guys to beat their kind of 77 kilo counterparts, or even 88 guys that will cut down to 80 kilos. So we think it's unlikely that a lot of the 66 guys will move over. A few of those guys we know definitely won't be. So Fionn made a YouTube video and she'd been asked about her boyfriend, Gabriel Souza, former silver medalist at Worlds. He will be doing ADCC because he got silver last time. It's a big goal of his to win ADCC. So that's like kind of confirmed from her. As well, one of the few B team guys that isn't jumping over, we've seen Ethan Krellenston, another 66 guy. he's pretty committed to doing ADCC. So few of those guys we know for sure, but we would speculate that for the most part of those guys will be doing ADCC because they don't want to be fighting guys cutting down from 80 odd kilos to that division.
Yeah, so we're following all the goss, right? So the Ethan comments came in an interview to promote karate combat with AJ Agazarm. They asked Ethan what event he was going to do and sort of dragged it out of him that he was still going to do ADCC. I believe 100% is what he said. And Fionn Davis did a very, very good interview on her
YouTube page.
Yeah, so check out Fionn's YouTube page for it, where she explains her reasonings for her deciding to do a super fight at CJI and drop out of the ADCC. And I thought it was very well explained. Her reasoning. We'll maybe get into it as we talk about why athletes might make the jump, but just confirming that Fionn is doing one match at CJI. There's one other super fight being announced so far. Craig Jones against Gami Garcia. And then there's hints that I think there's going to be 4 super fights, 2 on each day. We'll see how it shakes out. And Craig has suggested that he has some big names interested in doing it. And speculation is running rife as to who that might be. But I think right now it's best left unsaid. And if I was Craig, I might not have given the hints that I did, because a rule in promoting is don't overpromise and underdeliver. And while he's not quite overpromised, because he hasn't said who it is, if he doesn't now deliver a star of the caliber that he suggested, people are going to be disappointed rather than amazed at whomever it is. So we'll see. We'll see who it turns out to be.
Let's let them know why, and this has been speculated, just to kind of feel like people might get annoyed if we're keeping this from them.
Go on then.
I think he kind of alluded that it would be like a legend. He told Joe Rogan when they did a podcast together, and then they cut that bit, and he kind of got to see Joe's reaction. And I think one of his hints was Mexican-sounding last name. So obviously some Brazilian names sound quite Mexican as well. I think the one a lot of people were speculating, because he also said very inspirational story. So Marcelo Garcia sounds Mexican, and then he is obviously just coming back from beating cancer as well. So that kind of fits. That would obviously be massive, regardless of who he is up against. So that is kind of the speculation, but you can kind of run off with that as well and speculate who you think it might be off of that as well.
Yeah, because there's other names being bandied about, like Rafa Mendez. You know, is Mendez a Mexican-sounding last name? Would it be inspirational to see Rafa come back at his age and then beat someone much younger, etc.? So that's what I mean. Like, there is scope for playing the guessing game as to who might be, but it's just, I think, if I was running the tournament, I wouldn't want people thinking, oh, Marcelo's coming to do the tournament, and then it's not Marcelo. Oh, that's a shame. That would have been awesome. Just on Marcelo, there was, I think it'll be easy to find, there was footage came out of him rolling in the gym.
Yeah, got that as well.
Not too long ago, and it was an absolute pleasure to see Marcelo rolling in the gym, because while competitive Marcelo was amazing to see back in the day, I love seeing competitors just in the training environment, just doing regular rounds and seeing the jiu-jitsu that they use, particularly when, like, you know, they're more experienced than their training partners and you get to see quite a lot of their game in action. Always nice to see. So it was great to see Marcelo back on the mats.
Yeah. Going back to kind of like speculating through the division, so I think moving up to 77, all the guys that are in under 8 kilos so far are from that division. And I think this is one of the divisions we're most likely to see a bit of an exodus from, just because it is very close to that 80 kilo cutoff point. Guys might be happy they will have to cut a little bit less weight, and then as well they're going to be kind of at the top range of that, aside from some maybe smaller 88 guys that will cut down. And I was quite surprised to see William do the over, because he has just kind of bulked up from 77, and I thought for $1 million on the line he potentially could have cut that weight, but he's decided to leave that for his brother Andrew, and he's going to do the over 80. But yeah, we've got Andrew, Joseph, and Nicky so far. We've heard some rumours about other people that might be interested in that division, but we'll leave it at that. And yeah, I think that's going to be likely a division where some guys might be shifting over.
Yeah, so I'll drop a couple of names though that I think like is fine for saying. So one, someone who isn't in the ADCC, so it's an obvious target for Craig, is Mateusz Jasinski, who would compete at under 77. So he's a free agent right now, basically, right?
And I think regardless, he will end up at one of them because ADCC are going to be looking for new people anyway. So if you like Mateusz, he's probably going to be competing at one.
I just think it's not controversial to say Mateusz is a free agent and he'll be on the list for a target for probably both events now. And then, again, this is going off comments that have been made by Melky Galvao. He said his guys are going to wait until after the IBJJF Worlds, which take place for the black belts, June 1 and June 2. And Mika is going to decide after the Worlds what he's going to do. I would imagine Baby Shark would stick to the under 66. Makes sense for the size because under 80 is a big jump. But Mika has a decision to make. Now, let's just not necessarily put ourselves in Mika's shoes, but let's just say you're an athlete and you're yet to declare what tournament you're going to go for, right? We've talked about weight. What other factors come into it? And if you want to refer back to any interviews that have taken place and what athletes have been talking about, then we can do that now, right? So out of what you've seen, why do you think some might do one over the other?
Yeah, so a few reasons, I think. One is just like your kind of personality and disposition. If you're more driven by kind of goals and like the status of winning ADCC, that might be a reason you would do one or the other. Relationships with the guys running each competition could be another factor. Your kind of financial situation. See some guys that do all right for money and that would maybe push them towards ADCC, or they might do all right for money and then they don't feel like they need to kind of advertise themselves anymore by winning anything at ADCC, and they're like, okay, I'll have a crack at the million as well. As Craig mentioned, I think on a couple of podcasts, like guys coming from Brazil, maybe that money will go a lot further in Brazil, in certain parts of Brazil, than it would maybe for some of the other athletes in other countries. Yeah, I think those are some reasons you might go one or the other. As well as weight, obviously, as well. Kind of how you're looking at who is in each organization, who you maybe want to match up against, how likely you are maybe to win either or.
I was chatting with someone about whether one would do one event or the other, and they said they're thinking it's very important to make that decision based on where you are in your career. So if you have a big profile already and you're not focused on growing that at this stage, then make the jump to the CJI and go for the million. And I would think, like, guys in that category, I don't know if winning the ADCC would dramatically affect the value of a target. I think like they've already got pretty big names in the sport. They're already targeted for super fights. They already are popular for seminars. You know, would that make a big difference? Or would $1 million make a massive difference? And we've heard William, he's another one to do a YouTube video explaining his thoughts. Again, very good video and very articulate, well thought out. He said $1 million can like make such a big change to him, his brother, his family. And I think it makes sense for him. Like you don't have to win ADCC to have like a high standard in the sport. Look at Craig Jones.
Yeah.
So I think, but let's just say you're on the up, right? You're still trying to get that name recognition where you might get invited to like Who's Number One or another super fight show, UFC Fight Pass Invitational, etc. You know, I do think like a good show at the ADCC puts you on notice. And again, if you're at that level, like there is the lure of winning the $1 million, right? And then a big selling point for the Craig show is that every athlete who takes part in the tournaments will get $10,001, which the reason for the $1 extra, which I believe Craig is paying out of his own pocket, such as his generosity, is that the top prize in the weight classes in the ADCC is $10,000. Now, just while we're here, I believe the top prize in the female divisions, of which there are 3, was going to be $6,000, but it seems, and I'm not seeing it like officially written, but it seems that that is changing to $10,000.
Yeah, so Mo did a live stream on Instagram through the ADCC account. Jumped on that as soon as I saw it. I think I missed maybe the start of it, but as soon as I saw that pop up, I jumped into that. And someone had asked him about that, and he was kind of like, oh yeah, no big deal, no problem, you can consider that done. So obviously no official announcement, but from what he said in that, and I presume we'd get some backlash if he did do that after saying that, but he committed on the live stream to doing that, so we can assume it's going to be even pay for the divisions now.
Yeah, so, but if you go and do the Craig event, and you get your $10,001 for entering, which is good money, but you've got to weigh that up against, if I do the ADCC and I get $0 for entering, but my name blows up to the point where I get a couple of seminars that then gives me the 10 grand, you know, but then like that continues to be like a viable revenue stream for me.
Yeah.
You know, which one's worth doing? So I think it is very relative to where you are in your career, where you make, which tournament you make a decision to go to. If you think you're going to win the $1 million, you can absolutely go and try and win the $1 million.
Yeah, I think kind of how bothered you could be to like make the money could be a factor as well. Because yeah, we saw Craig after his performance in 2017. He was doing some seminars in the UK, and when you kind of looked at it, it's like, wait, he's doing this, and this within 5 days. Like, I think he was literally doing some seminars, like 2 in 1 day. Craig likes traveling about, doesn't come across as like a particularly lazy kind of guy. So for some people, they might enjoy that. They're like, oh, I would love to travel the world and do seminars. I would love to get invited to these like BJJ summer camps and like chill in a Greek island for a weekend and teach some jiu-jitsu. Some people, that sounds great. Other people to a more kind of lazy disposition like Nicky Ryan, doesn't sound like he would want to have to do all that work to make up all that money, which I think he could with his name, but I think he'd rather just kind of show up on the weekend, win the money, and then sit back and chill. So that's just like a personality thing.
Yeah, and Nicky Ryan, I don't think his standing in the sport would increase by winning the ADCC in terms of like the money opportunities that are available to him, whether he wishes to take them or not. And he has a legitimate chance at winning the under 80 kilogram division.
Yeah, I think with him like selling DVDs and whatever he does, he's going to have enough eyes on him that if he's kind of pulling out some new tech, people are going to want to learn it. When you saw him do all his like wrestle up stuff on Dan Leon, that was just Who's Number One, but people wanted to learn that because everyone was watching it. It's like, okay, cool, Nicky's doing this thing that's a bit different. He's wrestling up from guard. Let's learn that. So I think if Nicky's working on some new stuff that he could sell in a DVD, I don't think it matters too much where people see him do that because they're going to be watching him regardless.
So we know that Mika has a decision to make, and he's going to make it after IBJJF Worlds. It's an interesting decision because he's made a big deal out of trying to do the Super Grand Slam, and so he's competed at the Euros, IBJJF, he's competed at the Brasileiro, he's done the Pans. Now he's going to do the Worlds. Like, that was his trajectory. And then if he decides not to do the ADCC this time around, then to do the Super Grand Slam, which as we've spoken about on previous episodes of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, thus far there has been one person who has achieved that in history, Cabrinha. He's going to have to go through all that again. So it just depends whether you want to be part of a very exclusive club and part of Jiu-Jitsu history, or whether you're now thinking, actually, I'll do the million this time.
Yeah. Speaking on like having to do stuff again, like Mo has said, he said on the live stream anyway, if you jump ship and you go over and do CJI, you can come back to ADCC. He said like he's only banned like 3 people. That was for people like fighting in the venues or whatever. So he's not really up for like banning people, but regardless of who you are, if you jump ship, you're going to have to do the trials again. So he said trials next year might be quite entertaining, because we'll have some big names in that. So that might be another factor. You know, people are like, oh, I can't be bothered doing trials again. I've kind of got this position now where I'm invited. I want to keep on to that.
But William Tackett said he has absolutely no problem with doing trials. In fact, he likes doing the trials to earn a spot that way.
Like he deserves it if he gets to do that, yeah.
So we await more announcements of athletes going either way. It's just going to be very much relative to each individual athlete which decision they make. And we've seen conversation on both sides. So I don't think there's a right answer. I think as it stands, ADCC still, to me, is the bigger, better event, because where the best, biggest draws are, that's the event that, to me, carries the most luster. But we'll see how it all shakes out over the next couple of weeks. There are some other things to do with the events I want to touch on. One is we've seen the big change this year, 2024. The Craig Jones tournament is now in existence. How sustainable it is and whether it will continue year on year remains to be seen. So we've seen it have an effect because the women's prize money has already changed. So that's, not the biggest change in the world, but like a change. So it's had an effect. So that's good. But whether it will continue to exist over time, or whether this is just like a 1-year disruption and then it goes away, that definitely remains to be seen. And I just wonder whether that might play into some athletes thinking, like, is it worth making the jump if it's not going to be a thing going forward? I'd rather like stick with the ADCC and giving myself a chance to win that.
And on the other side of that, you might have a different perspective when you think this is my one and only chance to win $1 million as well. So yeah, you've got kind of two sides to that coin.
Yep, absolutely. The scoring in the Craig Jones tournament sounds utterly bizarre to me, and I think that if you're doing something different and people have to learn it, doing it at your tournament with no prep, no getting people used to it, just doing something that we all have to get our heads around, that even the athletes aren't used to, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should just follow, like, you could take an existing rule set and try and simplify it, but as it stands, there's going to be 3 5-minute rounds in the tournament matches up until the finals, where there'll be 5 5-minute rounds. So we've got rounds with 1-minute breaks. Rounds with breaks is not what generally happens in Jiu-Jitsu, for starters. And then the scoring is going to be done by 3 judges, and they're going to use traditional Jiu-Jitsu scoring, but then that is going to be converted into the 10-point must system. Right? So then ultimately the score for the round could be 10-9 or 10-8. That to me sounds baffling.
I think you can see what Craig's trying to get out of this. And I think he said this on the JRE podcast, but I think he's kind of targeting the MMA fans. Obviously, MMA has got a bigger fan base than Jiu-Jitsu, so if he can target some of that audience and like they'll maybe be familiar with that, then that's kind of like his idea for what he's going for. But I do agree, like a first time thing, and then like you're going to have the issue of like, oh, well, I thought this was the rules, and they're going to be like, oh, well, no, actually, this is the rules. It is going to cause some confusion. I'm sure athletes might be annoyed, like one way or another. I quite enjoy some of the events in the past that have done rounds. AIGA is a more recent one, I think. Was it ACB back in the day, the Russian organization? They did rounds as well. I found that quite entertaining because you had to like push the pace in that specific round, and you can just kind of like perform like a slower pace throughout like a 15-minute match and then turn it up at the end. You had to like do something in that five minutes. So I quite enjoy watching those kind of things like in the past, but I agree it's like surely there's going to be some chaos coming off of this.
If you want to get non-jiu-jitsu people watching jiu-jitsu, you make the score as simple as you can. Like you just say, two guys have a scrap, who wins, raise one of their hands. Like that's the way to do it if you're trying to attract MMA fans into it. And then, okay, you could make an argument that like, well, we're just going to score who wins each round and then have the winner at the end, 3 rounds to 0 or 2 rounds to 1. But this thing I've heard about jiu-jitsu points being converted into 10-point must, etc. It just sounds a bit too far for me. Too creative.
I don't know what he's going to do if there's a draw as well, because obviously it's a tournament format. You can't just be like, okay, draw, that's fine, like they do in MMA. So I think he did say that they will be doing like 10-8s as well, and I think his justification for like what would justify a 10-8 would be if like we finished the round and you had someone in a triangle or you had someone's back. Obviously it's going to get reset, but you're going to be awarded for finishing the round strongly in a good position. But if you finish maybe the first round on someone's back, win that 10-8, and then the other person wins the other 2 10-9, obviously that's going to result in a draw. Don't know how that's going to be resolved. He's not really specified that. So yeah, a lot of questions.
The arena as well, like taking influence from Karate Combat, which has the pit, and Craig says they've created the alley for the CJI. Again, we like the pit for Jiu-Jitsu. I think it's led to some positive changes in that you can't just run out of bounds, and when you back up, you can't back up into a solid structure, and then we're getting into MMA wall work. So that is good, but again, uncharted territory. And how many athletes are used to that environment? It's going to be very difficult to make the switch.
Yeah, I think because he's doing less divisions, like ADCC was typically seeing the 3 mat spaces, so whatever space in the venue minus the seats, that's what they've got to work with, and they can usually squeeze about 3 decently sized mats into there. I don't know if they're going to be doing the 2, 1 for each division, or they're just going to be doing the 1 mat, and that's how I would like it, because it's easier to kind of track as you're watching it. But if that's the case, they'll be able to have like a very big space, so hopefully they won't run into the edge. And then he said on the Joe Rogan podcast as well, that's almost what he wants. He doesn't want people backing up and having that kind of slanted wall be a disadvantage to them. He wants people circling and staying in the middle and like coming forward. So that's like something he's maybe thinking about that it might be good for the event. But again, yeah, we'll need to see how this goes with like a big scale tournament.
Anything else non-financial you want to bring up right now before I turn it on to the finances for the last section of this podcast?
If by finances you're talking about like the kind of philosophy behind both of their ideas, is that going to be tied into it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Okay, good. So I think, having consumed all the chat about this, right, I've now arrived at the decision that it is absolutely irrefutable in argument that ADCC should have been paying the athletes more. And the phrase that really got me, and I'll do my best to quote it, I can at least paraphrase it, is Craig Jones, in one of the interviews, might have been with Joe Rogan, might have been with Ariel Helwani, said basically if they'd have upped the winning pay to 20k, so twice the 10k that is currently going to be given to the winner of each weight class division, he wouldn't have done this, right? So I'm thinking to myself, for 10k in each male division, so 50k, right? And then there's 3 women's divisions. Now, they were 6K, but let's just round that up as well and say it's going to be the 10K, which they're now getting. So that's 80K, right? Now, let's just throw some more prize money in while we're at it, right? So instead of second place getting 5K, they get a little bit more. Instead of third place getting 3K, they get a little bit more. Instead of fourth place getting 1K, they get a little bit more, right? So for not much more than 100 grand, for 150 grand, you know, then this problem that now exists for the ADCC wouldn't have existed. Let's just say you've got 200 grand, right? And you think, well, let's spend that on the athletes, right? So we're going to give everyone who shows up some money to take part. And we're going to up the prize fund in every category, right? For 200K, this problem goes away. Now, 200K is a lot of money, but in terms of the finances we're talking about, it's not a lot. So I do think that we're going to see this affect. We've already seen it affect the pay in the women's division. I think coming out of this, it is going to affect the finances for the athletes and all of it. And that's a positive. I don't think you can come back. I don't think anyone can come back with a counter argument that for 100 or 200 grand, the athletes get paid more, and that's not a good thing, and that it wouldn't be possible based on the finances that we're talking about. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, more money for winning the divisions, and then as well, like we spoke about before the podcast, even giving everyone like a grand, so they're not having to like eat into their own money. I don't know if ADCC pays for people's travel. I remember Craig saying that his first ADCC in 2015, he had to sell his car just to go to that. I don't know what the situation with that is now, if they still have to pay or not. I've not heard any update that they do pay that, but even if they just gave everyone a grand so they can come to ADCC, not have to eat into their own bank account for that, they can enjoy the trip and not have to stress about money, that would be massive as well. And like in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't be a lot of money. And I think given that the prize money has been 10 grand for so long as well, we've seen ADCC grow and expand, and we've seen Mo kind of bragging about that. Oh, look what we've done in the past few years. And you've not even kept up with inflation. Like, from what it was originally to what it was now, it stayed the same. And then with inflation, it's probably worth about 3 times less. So, like, the very least you could have done was keep up with inflation, as well as keep up with the growth of the organization as well. And they've just not done that. And it's came to kind of bite them in the butt with this.
Yeah. It seems now that the CJI is going to have a prize fund 10 times the amount of the ADCC, which is crazy to me. I think if you look at the ADCC website, you can see a shakedown of all the divisions and the prizes that go. And I think like their prize pot is like 230 grand, right?
Between more athletes as well.
Between more athletes, yeah. And that, like, compared to how much they're allegedly paying to hire the T-Mobile Arena for the weekend, and again, I've seen nothing concrete about it, but it's an expensive place that could be, it's been suggested, I don't know, I'm just going like some numbers I've seen thrown about, it could be anywhere up to 2 million that is being asked for to run that arena. So if the athlete pay is like, 230 grand and then the arena is 2 million, like, I'm not saying don't push the boat out and try and grow the sport in terms of the arenas you're running and the production and the pageantry, etc. But you've got to take the athletes with you, because it's the athletes that are the show. And if you have a show with no athletes, it can look amazing and it can be in an amazing venue, but you're missing out the key component, like what are people going to come and watch?
Yeah, I think like tying into the UFC, who have had similar issues with people taking issue with them not paying their athletes as much. I think you obviously watch a lot of other sports. I think for the most part, most other big sports, just like 50% of the money, of the total revenue will go to the athletes, and then 50% will go to everything else. And I don't know when that started, but that's probably from like the players and athletes kind of coming together as like a union and saying like, okay, this is what we're kind of standing for. Not seen that in MMA so far. This is maybe Craig's attempt to try to do that. Like, okay, let's make a stand here. Let's make like a group of the top athletes that are like, we're not standing for this. We want a higher percentage of the revenues. You think that's kind of what he's going for with this?
I think so, yeah. And it's starting to happen. And I think the ADCC is going to have to change its pay structure on the back of this. And I think rightly so. And I think that the organizers of the ADCC can make the claim that they were trying to grow the sport by putting money back into production, back into upsizing the arena and all that. I just don't think it was necessary. I think if you do one show at the Thomas and Mack Arena in Las Vegas, where the ADCC was previously and the Craig Jones event is now going to run, you don't have to make the jump right away. You know, you can spend the next ADCC and the one after that, and then you're thinking, right, this thing's really starting to get going, because I think there were plenty of improvements that can be made in the production over a course of a couple of events, and then you make the jump. And I get the argument that can be made that where it's staged does matter, right? So it's like, oh, if we go to like a bigger venue, that seems more prestigious. You're going to get people wanting to go to that venue. You're going to get sponsors wanting to get on board. To me, the T-Mobile makes no difference compared to the Thomas and Mack. Now, I'm a pro wrestling fan. I follow All Elite Wrestling. When they said that they were going to run Wembley Stadium in the UK, I thought to myself, I have to be there. And so did more than 80,000 people. The draw for that show was that it was at Wembley. How amazing is this, that this company that has been in existence for less than 5 years at that time has been able to go to Wembley Stadium. But to go to Wembley Stadium, they didn't not pay the wrestlers more than 10K. You know, like, those wrestlers are on really, really good contracts. And as the promotions grow in, they've been able to attract more wrestlers and pay them more. So you've got to do both. And I think like the organizer of the ADCC can say, oh, we're trying to run the T-Mobile Arena for these reasons. And I can understand their reasoning. I just think you can argue against it that they're not quite there with it.
I think the fact that they didn't sell out the Thomas and Mack last time kind of speaks for itself and says everything that needs to be said. It's like, why are you spending all this money to upgrade your arena when you didn't even fill out the last one? It's obviously just so you can kind of put up this front that like, okay, look, we're expanded into the T-Mobile Arena. But really, if you can't sell an arena that's roughly half the seats last time, why are you spending all this money to go up to an arena double the capacity?
So the point of running Wembley for AEW is to grow the brand. It's to have all that visuals out there that Wembley was packed and we were running this show and look how big we are. The ADCC, if they run the T-Mobile and they don't sell it out, and what difference does it make for the next 2 years of the sport, you know? Like, AEW has been able to increase popularity, increase like the prestige of being associated with that brand, be taken more seriously, etc. All those things off the back of doing that. I don't know if like running that venue is going to have that effect on ADCC, but also I don't think the sport is at a place where it really matters for the ADCC. You know, it's the point of this ADCC is to like, why not just run the Thomas and Mack again, make it a bigger, better event, increase the athlete pay, And then in the 2 years between this event and the next event, try and grow the whole sport over that time. So the next time you come back, like maybe you have to run a bigger venue because like people are batting down the doors to get in, you know? Maybe more and more people, more and more athletes like want to do the event. Maybe you get like guys from other grappling events want to get like, you know, involved in super fights and things like that, and the sport becomes bigger and better.
I almost wonder if it's like a rich guy flex almost. It's like that sort of thing where he's like, oh, look at me, I've got in this arena. I almost kind of think it's like if you imagine a jiu-jitsu gym that had 30 members and then they decide, okay, we're going to move into this like big warehouse gym and we're going to have this like massive facility, but at the end of the day, you've still got only 30 members, and maybe all that money you're getting in from your members, we've completely maxed that out on your facility, and now you don't have any money to like do anything else in the gym, help the people that are trying to become athletes in the gym, as opposed to staying somewhere that you kind of suit, and then you've got more money to play around with. It's just like a bit unnecessary and almost just trying to like show off a little bit, I feel.
So just on that analogy, imagine that I say, we're moving gym, right? We're going to get a big, new, fancy gym, right? But you coach, and we go to the big, new, fancy gym, and actually, like, our membership does increase a bit because we're at the big, new, fancy gym. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is good. Like, my classes are getting busier.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go and speak to Ross and see if, like, some of the money can be passed back to me, because it's like, you know, I'm doing the work, the classes are busy. And I say, Calum, I'm like, unfortunately, like, my rent is now massive. I can't give you any. But maybe if we'd have just stuck at the smaller gym and focused on, like, making our product better, we could have got those people in the door anyway.
Yeah.
And I could have given you back more money, and suddenly, like, I'm not paying that extra money on rent. So I agree, it's a good analogy for it, but it would be, if I do make a switch with our gym, not me, but, like, if, like, the more senior people decide that, like, that would be necessary, you've got to take everyone with you. Like, you've got to take the coaches with you and say, like, you know, this will allow all of us to earn more money. And if we're earning more money, like, I'll definitely, like, give more money to you for your coaching and etc. You know, and we'll get more classes going. I think, like, if you just make the switch and then you're stuck on the same fee that, like, you originally got, like, and it's still the same 5 years later. And I'm like, yeah, but we've got this, like, amazing facility, and the production's amazing, and look at the speakers, the music's coming out of it, essentially. You're thinking, yeah, but that's not putting food on my table, you know? So I do get that. I think it's, I do understand, I don't want to get into just like bashing ADCC organizers. I think all we're saying is, like, while we can understand some of the reasoning for doing stuff, it might not have been carried out in the most optimal way.
Yeah, and it's obviously, there's downsides of what is happening, but like the big positive is that it is shining a light on this. And now that Craig Jones has got this like threat of doing this, he says he wants to make this a yearly thing. I think if ADCC listens to what everyone's saying and up the pay, if he does do this again, he will do this at a different time. But now he has this threat that if they don't up the pay, he's going to be like, okay, well, that's fine. Next time we're going to do all this stuff that happened last time again. So I think it's good that that threat is there. It's always good to have competition with that sort of thing. And if he'd done this at a different time, then it wouldn't have had the same impact. So as annoying as it is from a certain point of view that we're going to have to be watching these two events, we're not going to be able to see Nicky Ryan versus Mika potentially, or whatever matchup.
Or maybe we will.
Yeah, maybe we will, but we don't know. But these kind of things, I think the main point is, like, it is for the right reason, and sometimes you need drastic changes and like dramatic things to happen for these changes to happen and kind of shed a light on it. I
agree, and I think athletes' eyes have been open to this, and our eyes have been open to this, and maybe this is drawing out things that we weren't thinking about.
No, I wasn't thinking about it until Craig started talking about it.
And I think even like Craig starting the conversation, I think some of the stuff we've been chatting about today, we've been following this as it's happened. We're now discussing ideas that weren't being discussed 3-4 months ago. So the narrative shifted. Athletes are looking at this differently. Different people are adding thoughts to the process, and I think it, like, collectively, it is making a change in the sport. And I think it's right that that change is happening now, albeit as a fan, it's going to be a heavy load that weekend. But good news for you guys, the Jiu Jitsu Oracle is going to be all over it. So we will do our best to keep you up to date with absolutely everything that happens in both tournaments. Is there anything else you want to add to our conversation, Calum?
I think that covers it for now. Obviously, we'll probably do another one of these as more information comes out, more athletes move across, so we'll keep you updated on what's going on, but I think for now we've covered a lot of the bases.
Good. And give us your thoughts on what's happening in this. For people who follow Jiu-Jitsu, I think it's probably the biggest story. Well, I'm going to steal your line. It's, for you, it's the biggest story since the whole breakup of the DDS, and then everyone was trying to find out what was happening with that. If you're in Jiu-Jitsu, it is an interesting, exciting topic, and the good thing about this is that everyone's got opinions on it. So when we come to train, people are sharing their ideas with us, and like in terms of keeping Jiu-Jitsu people interested in what's going on, I think this is good. So please, like, comment on what we're doing and let us know your thoughts, and we'll try and add it into discussions in the future. But for now, we've already ran about 16 minutes over what we were planning to do. So let's call it a day at that point.
See ya.